Hey everyone, welcome back to Hack the Platform channel. I'm continuing my series on code apps with AI, and this is part 3. If you haven't watched part 1 and part 2 yet, you can find them in the playlists. I highly recommend starting there so everything makes sense step by step. In part 2, we scaffolded our app using Claude code. Now in part 3, we'll switch gears and start using GitHub Copilot. So this is where the app starts becoming a bit more dynamic. Let's get started. So up to now we used Claude Code to scaffold the project. From this point on, we'll use GitHub Copilot command line interface. And the important thing is it works very similar to Claude Code. You still describe what you want, get suggestions, apply changes. The main difference is Claude's more agent-style full workflow, Copilot command line interface, more command-driven terminal focused, but conceptually the workflow is the same. So you can still use the same Power Apps, Code Apps preview or Power Pages, so the same plugin I've discussed. Okay, in this step we'll add two simple but important integrations to demonstrate the usage of connectors. First of all, we will add the user profile somewhere next to support agent manager with the display name, profile photo showed on the top right corner. The data will come from the Office 365 users connector. And also we will add another view. So the Outlook calendar, we will fetch user events, display them in the app. This gives us real user context, real-time data, and much more realistic app. When you develop your app in a Visual Studio Code or manually, you usually add connectors using Power Platform command line interface. On the Microsoft page, everything is described how it's done. So this is the foundation. Typical flow, you enable or configure a connector. You need to authenticate, so you need to create a connection. Yeah. Then you bind it to an app. You run a specific command, so the Power Platform command line interface, where you need to include the connection ID. So you provide the Power Platform pack code at data source, a shared Office user, so this is this type of a connector, and also the connection ID. We will not run this on our side, but this is what happens in the background. Yeah, so this will generate specific files inside our project, and then we can use those data sources in our code. Instead of doing everything manually, we can use the Power Platform plugin and the power of a GitHub Copilot. So this helps with understanding the app structure, configuring connectors, speeding up setup. And then the GitHub Copilot can query all the necessary data, all the necessary connections on its own. If the connections do not exist, we will get a message that, hey, please create the connections. So let's do this using the GitHub Copilot. We simply describe what we want. I've prepared a short prompt where I'm explaining what I want to create. Everything I'm using in my series can be found on my GitHub repository. So this is the explanation, the prompt that I added, and then we'll see what eventually happens when GitHub Copilot integrates all the data. As you can see, GitHub Copilot already implemented multiple UI changes, but it hasn't yet added the connectors of a 365 user service, for example, or Outlook. So let's try to edit. Add data source. As we can see, it tries to add Office 365 connectors. It runs pack connection list actually to identify if the connections exist. It tells me that there are some connections that do not exist. And yeah, there's for Outlook, for example, it does not exist. Office 365 users is there. The connection was found. The Office 365 Outlook, no connection exists. Now we will need to add the Office 365 users data source. That's interesting. We'll see if it's possible to add the Office 365 users. It will be added right now. Yes. So the connection, the data source will be added into the app. But Office 365 Outlook, I assume we should receive a message that will say, hey, Office 365 Outlook doesn't exist. Please create the connection on the Power Platform environment and try it again. Yeah. So exactly, that's what the message says. So I need to open the environment, create the connection, and then tell the GitHub Copilot that it is created. So let's try to do without this link. We can see that the connection was added, so we can tell Copilot, hey, it's created. Connections were added. And if you check Visual Studio Code, for example, what was generated, we can open power.config.json, and this is exactly where those connection references were added. If we go even deeper into the generated folder, and inside the services, we'll find the two services generated out of those connectors with pretty much familiar methods that we have there. Send email version 2, for example, those are the actions of those connectors that we use in flows, yeah, or Power Apps. Or user service, we have user profile, user photo metadata, user photo, and so on and so forth. So all those methods we can then use within our code. Okay, the app was deployed. Now we can open the app and see if everything's working. Now this looks already familiar. I need to consent the usage of these connectors. And we can see that the Dust thesis was loaded. There was a problem with the image. Let's check the calendar. No upcoming events in the next 7 days. Let me do two things. First, fix the image, saying that the image is not working. And then the calendar, let's say, show the events for the next 30 days. And let's see if anything will be shown for us. So the fixes were made. Now we can check the app. So as you can see, the app runs, the photo is shown, that's Darth Thaddeus. If we open his calendar, we also see the events from the Darth Thaddeus's calendar. We can easily verify that. Now we have here the 4th of May, the 7th of May. If we open here, for example, the 7th of May, we have that calendar. And then on the 4th of May, we have Order 66 anniversary. So everything's fine and working. Yeah. Calendar data appears, user info loads. This is where small issues can also show up, and Copilot command line interface helps fix them quickly. So in this video, we continued our series with part 3, switched to GitHub Copilot command line interface, used it similarly to Claude code, added connectors, yeah, and integrated user profile and calendar into the app. That's it for part 3. In the next part, we'll introduce Dataverse as the main data layer. So all different items that we see here, like tickets, Kanban customers, will try to implement it with Dataverse and save and load data from different Dataverse tables. Make sure you're subscribed, and I'll see you in part 4. Let's keep building.